So where is that deep? What does the deep represent?
The grave?
The dead. Okay, there's another reference also when Christ is about to deliver a man that is with a lot of demons inside, and the demon said to Christ, "Don't send us to where?
The abusos.
To the
Abu.
abuses, which is the same word. That's exactly the same word as in Romans 10:7. It's exactly the same word. The word abusos is actually the deep, and he actually says,
Yes.
don't take us to the deep before our time. It's a place of the dead. Now, and the sea gives up the dead. It's the same beast. The beast from the abyss and the beast from Revelation 13 is the same beast. In fact, Revelation 17 tells us that that beast comes from the deep, from the word abusos, from the bottomless pit. Are you following what I'm saying? Okay, so that beast comes from the dead. Now we got a problem, because waters, as some of you pointed out, yes, waters represent people, but the sea does not represent people. I can give you more examples of it. I gave you some references. Let's go to just read a couple more. Isaiah 51 verse 10. Who would like to read that? Isaiah 51 verse 10.
Hang on.
Are you not the one who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, that made the depths of the sea a road for the redeemed to cross over?
The word for deep and sea are always synonymous, as we see, for instance, the book of Jonah, of death. You have taken me down to the deep. Is a place of where sin takes you. I don't know if you realize, but Babylon will get one of the descriptions of the destruction of Babylon is that she will get millstone around her neck and throw to the bottom of the sea. You know where our sins go? Our sins, the sin goes to the bottom of the sea. Yeah. Never to be resurrected, never to be brought up. But all of a sudden, yep, go.
Oh yeah, I'm just curious. There's one more use in Revelation of the word abrusos, which is in the fifth trumpet. Do you see that tying in? Okay.
It's the same beast.
Yeah. Okay.
It's actually the same beast, because as we mentioned, the first 11 chapters are like progressive boom, 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 things that are happening, and then Revelation 12, 13, and 14, there's a summary. So that means, as a summary, you're going to have repetitive ingredients, because it's summarized in the first 11. So summarizing the first 11 is you're going to have reference to that beast coming from the abyss, and which is actually the fifth trumpet, and we'll look into that. I think we'll have time for that. That's actually the fifth trumpet. Exactly. That is actually it. Now, I want you to notice also the fact that how many of you have read the first piece coming out of, you read it, I mean, you read sea, but you interpret waters. How many of you have done that in the past? You read sea, but interpret waters. Yes? Okay. Now, when you interpret waters, then we interpret people. So now we'll have a second beast that comes out of where? Where is the second beast in Revelation 13 coming out of?
The earth.
The earth. So when we don't read sea, we read waters, and we interpret people. Then when we're talking about the earth, we interpret the earth as what?
No people.
No people. Okay. Now I want you to notice something here. Go back to Revelation 13, and you tell me if that is consistent to what we read in Revelation 13 on the other references on the same chapter, on the very same chapter of the word earth. So, I'm just going to see, all right, the verse 8, I'm going to read verse 8, just read along with me, verse 8 first. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written, not been written in the book of life of the Lamb is slain from the foundation of the world. Notice that that's exactly what he says also in Revelation 17 when he says that the beast will come from the deep. Okay, exactly the same thing, whose names are not written. Now, I'm going to read it, being consistent with earth, meaning no people. I'm going to read it like that. See if it makes sense. And all who dwell on a place where there's nobody there will worship him. So how many will worship him if there's nobody there? How many dwell on an earth when the word earth means there's no people? Okay, now let's go to verse 12. Verse 12. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes no people, and those who dwell nowhere or where no people dwell, and to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. Verse 14. And he deceives those who dwell where nobody dwells by those signs which he has granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell where nobody dwells to make
Yes.
to the beast who was wounded by the sword and live. Now you tell me, if we're consistent with what the earth means, it doesn't even fulfill in that very chapter.
Yeah. It's not consistent.
Not even in that chapter fits in. Okay.
Yeah. That's typical.
Okay, there's a any questions on that? Yeah, because I'm thinking that might actually be a mind shifter to some.
I have a question. Okay.
Yep.
So the way that I've heard it interpreted in terms of being where there were no people is that there were no people in terms of history for a long time, and that it's a recent history as opposed to not having no people. In other words, there are people there when this is happening, but historically up to a certain point it was not a land that was in the map of Western history or that kind of thing.
The only problem is that it's only consistent there. Like it's only consistent there. There's only one verse when we will apply that. Nowhere else. Let me just see if I can find the reference here. So we can actually have a biblical definition, because I don't know if you noticed, but when we go and rather than reading sea, we read waters, then we already on a little sidetrack already. And the way we actually interpret earth is by an opposite, not by a biblical definition. You understand what I'm trying to say here?
Well, I'm a little confused because, okay, so to summarize, the beast comes out of the depth, and the depth is where the dead is. And the seven-headed, 10-horned beast, the second beast, comes out of the land where the people are. So, so what is your
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So well, I just need to sort of find now the reference for you in the words of Jesus. Let me just see if I can find it. I'm here. So the reference that I'm looking for is he who is of the earth